Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and we've got an amazing guest for you today. We have Nate Robert. He's the founder of the startup Baton, and now one of the chief technologists leading Ryder's Silicon Valley-based technology lab. So welcome to Manifest. Is this your first time here?
First time here, yep. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so you have a really interesting story, and I remember hearing, because I've done content for years for FreightWaves, and so I remember hearing a lot of your story from them, especially around Baton. So Can you kind of give us a little bit of insight as to how the hell you find yourself in the supply chain industry?
Yeah, so no. It was an interesting story of how we got there. So back in 2018, I met up with one of my buddies from grad school, Andrew, who is now my co-founder, and we decided, okay, we want to start a company together, but we don't have a specific idea that we want to go after. So we spent 9 months part-time looking at ideas in different industries, or really just researching industries in general to see, okay, what industries are on the verge of some large technological shift. And at the end of those 9 months, we realized that freight and logistics is an industry that, okay, with the ELD mandate of 2018, 2019, everything is suddenly becoming connected. Also, at that point, it was 5 or so years after Flexport, Convoy, Uber Freight, Transfix, all of them started getting into the industry. And so it really was the beginning of this big tech wave that we believed at the time, and I think has proven to be true, was about to take over the whole industry and create a lot of change. So we decided to try and jump into logistics. We had no idea anything about logistics. We went to Atlanta for a FreightWaves conference, which was incredible, and met Craig. Craig then drove us around Chattanooga. We met a bunch of people. We through that we interviewed over 100 different executives in the freight and logistics industry. We also drove around to a bunch of the truck stops in the Bay Area.
Oh, interesting.
And interviewed truck drivers and all the time asking, okay, what are the pain points that you feel in logistics industry? Like, what are the hard parts of your job? And we kept hearing this pain point around an inefficiency or a lot of waste being created with how you figure out what loads to assign to what drivers when you're managing a fleet of trucks. And so that's where we initially targeted in and what we started Baton around.
And it was almost like a creative parking situation, right? Is that how I remember it correctly?
Well, so actually, yeah, I'm simplifying the story. What actually happened is we started with this long haul relay network. So the idea was, okay, long haul trucks are coming into the LA area. The worst part of their journey is in LA. They're dealing with traffic, wait time at the warehouses. So instead, we set up these drop zones outside of major metro areas where long haul truck would come in, drop off a trailer, and then we would use a local driver for the final delivery. What we realized, though, is even within the final delivery piece, there is still a massive optimization scheduling problem. And so we end up building technology to optimize our local fleet of trucks. And then that technology is eventually what we realized was much more valuable than this like long haul relay service. And so we started focusing on the tech, and then the tech is eventually what got acquired by Ryder in the end of 2022.
So it's interesting that you did all of this legwork to talk to all of these founders, talk to a bunch of people in logistics, and then you launch a product, and then you figure out that we've got to adjust it too.
Yeah.
So how did you work through that process? It was basically just customer feedback, just a constant customer loop?
Yep, constant customer feedback, and I think just a recognition that when startups begin, the percentage of successful companies that do the exact same thing that they started on in the first place is very small. Like, everyone goes through massive pivots and changes. And I mean, at one point, Airbnb was selling breakfast cereals, for example. And
they were selling breakfast cereals?
And that was a way for them to make money on the side during the during Obama's first time he ran for office, and they were making Obama O's, and it was they had to make money on the side while they were doing these other things. So
was it like a marketing ploy to push Airbnb, or?
I believe it was they were trying anyway to make money to keep themselves afloat. So that was one thing they did, and the point being though that like all of these companies, like nobody ends up being exactly what they initially thought, and so just being aware of that and being open to, okay, we need to take feedback from our customers and from the market to better evolve our product. And we realized after we had this relay network and then we built all this technology, we were using the technology in sales calls to show people how awesome our service was. And people kept saying, hey, okay, your service, whatever, but like, how do I get the technology? And then that's what led us to, okay, let's focus more on this. Yeah.
And so how do you get to the point where so you launch the business, you have a startup, you shift gears a little bit as far as your focus is concerned, and then all of a sudden you end up at Ryder. Like, fill in those gaps for us.
Yeah. So Ryder was so we met a bunch of the Ryder folks even before we incorporated the company. And we had some back and forth with Mike Placencia, who now runs Ryder Corporate Venture Group. We had some back and forth with him on ideation. And so we were really close to Ryder the entire journey. Ryder started their own corporate venture group right before we raised our Series A, which was the beginning of 2021, and we were either their first or second investment. So they were part of our Series A. And then after that, we worked even more closely with them, calls every now and then with some of the leadership team, eventually starting to talk to them about, hey, do you want to, if we were to sell this technology we have, would you want to buy it as a SaaS product? And those conversations led to, it's not enough for us to buy this as a SaaS tool. We need to buy your entire company so that we can take what you have and then build upon it and customize it for Ryder's specific use case.
They're really kind of a sleeper as far as they have this like almost like a tech startup hub component to their business, and most people just think of them as like truck leasing, correct?
Yeah, and that's been an interesting, I think, transformation where a lot of people, especially people outside of the business, who are outside of the industry, who don't know about Ryder's supply chain solutions group or their dedicated transportation group, only see Ryder as hey, this is like a 90-something-year-old company that does truck leasing and maintenance. But really, internally, Ryder is building out this core competency of technology. And they've invested over $1 billion in the past 5 years in tech-forward companies and straight-up technology companies like Baton. They have their whole corporate venture group, which has done a ton of investments across the industry. So they are really trying to be one of the technology leaders, even though they're a 90-year-old company. So it's an incredible evolution that they're going through.
So we're here at Manifest, the future of supply chain and logistics. Now, by the time people listen to this, it'll probably be a month later after this is over. But I'm curious as to what you're speaking about here. I think you're talking about AI as far as it's obviously the buzzword everybody is talking about over the last year. So how do you see AI fitting into this industry?
So, and I'll kind of summarize some of what we talked about in the panel this morning. But when I think about when our team talks about like the development of AI, we talk about it in 3 waves. So the first wave is okay, these initial foundational models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Bard, Facebook, Llama. That was the first wave where, okay, now people have this interface that they can like text, and it's trained on a bunch of publicly available data. The second wave is this shallow horizontal layer that is built on top of the ChatGPT. So it's things that still use publicly available data primarily, and it's things like, okay, now I'm going to create a chat bot that uses ChatGPT as the backend, or I'm going to create like a plugin sales tool that I can write emails with, or I'm going to create a tool that helps marketing people generate content better. That's a shallow horizontal layer, and supply chain companies should be looking at these as tools that they can plug into their sales team or their marketing team, et cetera. The third wave, though, is when you have companies with massive proprietary data sets who can then use those data sets to train on top of the foundational models. And then, okay, so if you have a company like Ryder with all of the transportation and logistics data that we have, you train like a Ryder GPT, you can ask questions not only like, hey, where's the status of this, what's the status of this load, but you can say, hey, how can I most efficiently move all of these shipments from A to B? How can I design my supply chain to better account for weather disturbances like hurricanes? That's when you get like a much deeper and more intense value add from large proprietary supply chain data sets.
What does that look like from a user perspective? That maybe, Ryder, is it like a SaaS product? Is it, you're already a customer of Ryder and it sits on top of, maybe a, back-end system that's proprietary to Ryder? What does that look like?
There are a lot of different ways it could manifest. Like I think the easiest one to talk about is, okay, you've got a chat bot that as a customer of Ryder, you're using Ryder Transportation Services. Can you connect, like, can use this chatbot to answer questions about your existing freight, and that gives you faster answers than if you were to go through an operator or something. But still having the customer service representative there to help with more complex questions. I think a big piece of all of this is like when AI comes in, we do not see it as replacing jobs. We see it as augmenting jobs and allowing people to be way more powerful. But with the specific interface, it's like, okay, maybe it's a chat thing. Maybe there's other ways to do it in the future, but
so it's really customized for the customer, whatever their preference is to live on top of the tool that they're already using.
Right. And you could even say, okay, like, in the future, are there ways that we can connect with the customer system and build this functionality into their TMS instead of them having to come to Ryder system, things like that. There's a lot of options.
I think that there's a lot of companies that they're just almost like tech fatigue.
Yeah.
Especially with AI, because there's so many tools. It feels like every other week that there are more and more tools coming out. So it's almost like I don't know where to start because there's a million different ways that this could go. And how should I choose to invest my time and energy and budget into something that I don't know that actually going to work for me?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with. You're totally right. There's a ton of noise around. Okay, this new AI tool, and I think for business leaders, the important thing is to think about, okay, what are the pain points that I'm feeling right now, and then from that pain point, what is the best way to solve the pain point? Don't just blindly go look at here's all the AI tools, because like you need to actually be solving a pain point that improves your business with these things. And and a lot of times AI might be the solution, but I think more frequently AI is like overkill for the specific problem you're trying to solve.
How are you using AI in your work life?
So, in work life, I would say
or personal life too.
Yeah,
it's helped me on trip planning.
Yeah. We'll give. So like personal life, like I go to ChatGPT instead of Google now.
Yep.
Work life, I think the most important tool for our team has been GitHub Copilot, which is okay. So GitHub has all this. Talking again about Wave 3, GitHub has all this proprietary data on code, and so they've been able to train their own Copilot using all of that data, and so now that Copilot can help engineers write code way faster. Like if I'm writing a bunch of test cases, I can just use Copilot to generate them much more quickly than me slogging through a bunch of repetitive code.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was listening to prep this morning for our conversation. I was listening to your interview with Cassandra Gaines about a year ago, and she had asked that question about how are you the developer team, or you have engineers that are working on your team. So now it sounds like, and you answered in that question that you have a team of engineers, but now it sounds like you're able to, almost do code yourself. Is that accurate? Or
so the Baton team, which is now the Ryder Technology Innovation Lab, we're about 40 people in San Francisco.
Oh wow!
And it's mainly engineers, designers, product managers, and a recruiting team. But out of the 20 or so engineers that we have, they are now developing with Copilot as a part of that. And so that just, again, we still need all these engineers, but they can now be more efficient and develop code more quickly by utilizing Copilot.
Is there anything like public, I guess, that you can share as far as like what they're working on, or maybe some products that are coming out in the future?
So one of the, I think, so two of the things that we've talked about before are, one, when we were acquired, we had this big optimization platform, and one of the big projects we're working on is taking that existing technology and then converting it for Ryder's use case. We're no longer managing like 20 trucks, now we're managing 10,000 trucks. So that's a massive
scaling
evolution.
problem.
Yeah. And then the second thing that we talk about is especially when you think about how are we going to leverage AI in the future, the most important first step is making sure that your data is structured in a unified way that you can leverage with these AI models. So one of the other big projects we're working on is, okay, how do we take data from all the different systems that Ryder has, ingest it into one place, standardize and normalize it into what we call the atomic model of freight. It's like a single data model that can support data structures for everything from LTL to truckload to brokerage to intermodal to warehousing, and like get all that data in one spot so that we can leverage it for the products we're building today as well as AI applications in the future.
So being here at the conference, I want to get back to your panel a little bit. Obviously AI is a topic that we could just, go on and on about, but I'm curious as to, were there any takeaways or any lessons that you've learned from that conversation with other people that are working on some of the same problems you are?
So it was interesting that I would say that the panel did a good job of bringing people from a bunch of different angles on the industry. So there was a guy from Microsoft, there was a guy at Rail, for example, and so actually it was more interesting for me to see how, like, there wasn't any overlap. So it wasn't like, oh, I learned something about my specific way of thinking about AI, as much as it was interesting to hear, okay, how are they thinking about AI within Rail, which is tangential to what we're doing right now, but like maybe in the future valuable, or like how Microsoft is thinking about it as a provider and a supplier of technology to the industry, that kind of thing.
What kind of key takeaways were that really resonated with you?
I mean, I think from Microsoft's perspective, and this makes a lot of sense, there's a lot of, when people think about creating their own models on top of their own LLMs, there's a lot of people that are worried about security issues and
privacy.
And privacy and all that. And so Mike from Microsoft just talked about that and how forefront that is in Microsoft's mind, to make sure, okay, like, let's make sure that people are comfortable with this, even if like potentially the actual security risk is maybe not that high, but we still need to make sure all of our customers feel completely comfortable with this.
Because that's their perception coming to them.
It's all about perception in addition to any like actual real risks.
And so with being sort of, Baton is such a great name. I love that branding.
Thanks.
And so when you are having this team now, because it really translates really well, actually, if you think about it from the technology standpoint, I'm sure you've thought about it plenty. But from that lens of like the things that you're trying to build to better a future of the 90-year-old company, I guess my next question is, what do those next products look like outside of optimizing the data that you already have? What are those big problems that you guys are trying to solve?
Yeah, and so without diving into specifics too much, but like it is interesting that Ryder has so many different divisions within. I mean, there's a Ryder brokerage, managed transportation, dedicated, warehousing, fleet management, all of these different things. And so from a very high level, we're thinking, okay, how do all of these things fit together? And like some of that is obvious, like there are a lot of warehousing clients that also need a dedicated transportation service. Some other ways might be, okay, there may be other ways that things can work together, but only if you have the right technology in place. And so one of the things we're working on right now is a broader strategy and vision across all of these different departments, and how can we optimize and use technology to leverage across all of Ryder, not just in like the dedicated group, which is where we're focusing right now.
And so with all of, I think it's really smart and also tough for founders to be so hyper-focused on their own product and the problems that they're trying to solve. And then you come to an event like this, and it's like, wow, there are so many more problems that actually need to be solved as well in addition. So I'm curious if you've had a chance to, meet other people, meet other startups, meet, some folks on the expo floor. Is there anything that you're seeing here or hearing here that excites you, or, it was a really like thought-provoking moment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, some conversations around warehouse automation and wearables for warehouse like frontline workers.
The moonwalkers.
Yeah, it's like super interesting, and there's a couple of companies in that space that I think makes a lot of sense. Like okay, the person who's walking around the warehouse that's not connected at all with like a gun scanner that they're using, that's a very old way to think about things, and there's so much more that we can do today with warehouse connectivity and like giving warehouse workers like better tools for this kind of thing, which is interesting because I haven't focused a lot on the warehousing side at all.
And that's what's so fantastic about this conference, is that I've been to plenty of logistics conferences, but this one is the first one that I've been to that really brings the whole supply chain under one roof.
Yes.
And you can see these robotics in action and all of the complex things that they're solving. But then from a pick and pack perspective, but then you have the down to your point is the warehouse worker and how they're being optimized. I mentioned moonwalkers earlier, which helps sort of the warehouse workers cut their steps down from 30,000 steps a day to half.
Yeah,
and so
that's
amazing. There's also another, I don't actually think that they're here, but I've talked to them before, but they have this Pro Glove, where instead of a barcode scanner, the scanner is actually in a glove that they wear, so they don't have to the couple
Right,
of
you can
seconds
just do
that
it
it
on your
takes.
hand instead of like getting this
It's almost
thing
like
out
Iron
and-
Man.
yeah.
Like it's an Iron Man glove that you're wearing.
Right.
So you save, those half a second,
Right.
when you're doing something, 1,000 times a day, that half a
Right.
second adds up.
Yeah. It's very cool. And like, yeah, I totally agree. A lot of other conferences I've gone to, I feel like we're more focused on like trucking and brokerage and like just that piece of things, which makes sense because that's what we've optimized for. But yeah, being here, seeing the entire gambit of like the entire supply chain, like supply chain is so much more than just trucking, is a very cool thing. So.
Absolutely. So I guess what's next for you and the team? Like what are you excited to be, maybe you're launching something soon. I know we kind of talked about, some new products that you're working on, but I guess maybe I'll switch my question to what does a day-to-day look like for you? Especially as you shifted into Ryder.
Yeah. So as we've shifted into Ryder, so before Ryder, when we were as a startup, we had a whole ops team, we had a whole sales team, and so my time was very much divided amongst a lot of different things within the business. And now it's like, okay, we're focused on building technology that provides value to Ryder and Ryder's customers, and so I get to be a lot more focused on working with the product team, working with the engineering team. Okay, what is our product strategy? What's the product roadmap look like? And then working with Ryder's leadership team to communicate that, make sure we are addressing the needs of Ryder leadership. And then also there's a huge chunk of my time that's spent in the field with Ryder operators. Because we want to make sure we're building something that works for these operators. And so we go to the field, we show them mocks, we interview them on their pain points. Okay, here's V4 of the product that we've built. Tell me all the ways that it doesn't work or that it sucks so that we can improve it for V5. So I'd say like that's also a huge
sticking with your roots of getting that customer feedback, and it just never stops because you're always evolving. This industry is always evolving. Now for this show, we started off as like sort of a freight marketing focused podcast, but then it shifted about a year ago into more global supply chain initiatives. But I still like to ask a few marketing questions just because I think personal branding is so important.
I'll do my best. So let me know.
I think this is a good marketing tactic as well as appearing on podcasts, spreading the message organically and having these kinds of conversations. So I have a set amount of questions that I like to ask each guest that comes on the show. So first question is, how do you think about marketing when it comes to you and your company?
So I'll give, let me know if this is answering the way that you were hoping, but within us, because we're running a technology group within Ryder. Ryder's a 40,000+ person company. The products that we're building, there's actually almost like a internal marketing component within this massive company where we can't just build products and then throw them over the fence and expect people to use them. We do have to think about, okay, how are we perceived within Ryder? How are we making sure to get the word out about our team within Ryder so that the operators are excited to use the tools that we're building? That's like our version of marketing.
I love that because it's internal marketing. And I spoke to a guest about a year ago, and it sort of blew my mind that that's how she initially starts the marketing conversations, is that she starts internally before they ever go externally. And so I think that's a really important aspect.
And I would say it's not like we do think about it. It's not like we're running massive campaigns and everything, but it's okay. There are internal ways to post on our progress. We can do that. When there's larger events, like my co-founder and I will speak and give an update on, okay, here's what we're doing. And then a lot of it really is just being in person with the operators and then knowing that the operators will talk to other operators. And so that's
word of mouth on steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you can utilize 40,000 workers that are already internal and already a fan of the company and invested in the best interests of the company.
Right.
All right, next one. What's your fave social media platform and why?
So I hardly use any social media.
Really?
So it would be LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because we're growing our team very quickly right now, and so I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn looking at people's profiles and going through that as part of interviews, but that's basically the extent of my social media.
Is it conscious by choice, or you just never kind of got into it?
I don't think I never really got into it. Yeah.
Probably for the best.
Is maybe for the best. Yeah, I'm probably missing out on some things, but for the best things, my siblings will send me stuff and then make fun of me for not being on things. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's actually, I think about it every day, quitting social media. But, we're kind of in it, and
once you're in it, you're in it. It's fine.
Necessary evil at this point with podcasting. But it has its pros and cons, so I'm sure you know that. But what is your favorite SaaS tool that you use every day that isn't your own?
That is not our own. I really like, there's an email client called Superhuman, or not an email client, it's like you use Gmail, but you can plug it into Superhuman, and then you do your emails through Superhuman, which is, it's the like best UI UX I think of any tool that I really use, and every single day, and I think it, like the value of this is I get through my emails 30-40% faster.
Wow.
It's great. So I highly recommend
mental
checking it
note
out.
has already been made because I'm already in email hell, so I'll be stealing that one.
Yes.
All right, next one is a favorite freight business that isn't your own.
Freight business. Interesting. Freight business.
Or supply chain.
This is a good question. There's there's some interesting things around like the EV space, I think, that I think unknown challenges coming up with, okay, now I've moved over my entire fleet from diesel to electric vehicles. It's actually a massively different fleet management problem. Okay, I'm doing electrification charging overnight. How do I manage the different levels of battery levels of each of these trucks? And so there are a couple of companies working on that EV fleet management problem.
I think Terawatt is here, and they're trying to solve that problem.
I know there's a couple, and so I'll say that as a category I think is really interesting.
That's a good. I like that answer. So. All right, what is a book or podcast that changed your perspective on something?
There's a book called Extreme Ownership. It's written by two former Navy SEALs, and one of the cultural components, or one of the cultural values that we have at Baton is extreme ownership, and it's the idea that it doesn't matter from what angle you are touching a problem, you should feel extreme ownership in trying to solve it. And I think that's made a big impact on that idea has made a big impact on our team of everyone stepping up and proactively trying to solve problems. And nobody, you get rid of people making excuses, you get rid of people playing the blame game. Everybody just wants to solve the problem. And when things go wrong, everyone takes blame on themselves. And so when that happens, then everybody just works together so much more effectively. It's called Extreme Ownership. And
love that. Great answer. All right, and last one, what is your favorite supply chain or logistics fact?
Favorite? I would say, so the average truck only gets 6.5 out of the 11 drive hours. So trucks can drive, long-haul trucks can drive for 11 hours a day by DOT regulation for their hours of service. The average truck only drives 6.5 productive hours out of that 11. And that is a lot of people talk about a driver shortage problem. I think we have a driver efficiency problem. And if you can move that 6.5 hours up to 7 or 7.5, you've solved the driver shortage problem.
Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of drivers that would say that we have no shortage. It's actually a retention issue.
Exactly. It's a retention issue. It's an efficiency
quality
issue,
of life,
optimization, efficiency. Yeah.
And so when you, I guess from that lens, what are you seeing as far as what's affecting that efficicy time? I imagine wait times at shipper locations.
A lot of it is the stuff that we initially set out to try and solve. It's okay. How do I coordinate the exact right appointment times when I'm driving across the country? How do I, even when I get to the warehouse, I'm now waiting in detention for 4 hours before I get unloaded, and then after I'm done unloading, I got to wait around until the next day before I can do my next pickup. And so all of these things together are what contribute to that 6.5 number. And if you have an optimization platform that's better matching drivers to loads, and it knows average wait times at warehouses, that's how you can increase the number of actual productive hours.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great fact.
So.
All right, Nate.
Cool.
That was where can folks follow you? Follow more of your work?
Again, I think so Baton, we have a
Oh yeah, I guess I can't really follow you on social media because we just covered that. So
Baton has a LinkedIn page. Also, Baton.io is the website for our specific team, and we're hiring a bunch of different positions right now. And then otherwise, anything Ryder related is for the broader team.
For sure. We'll put all that in the show notes just to make it easy for folks. But thank you so much for joining the show and appreciate your time and insight.
Thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
was great. Thanks.